Welcome everyone to our 7th virtual artist talk in our ongoing series, presented as part of Nexicom Presents Fourth Line Theatre at Home and our Epic Women's Directing Project, which focuses on the lives and careers of Canadian women working in theatre and beyond. I'm so excited to spend some time this evening with the fabulous Linda Kash, but before I do, I have a few things I just wanted to go over with you. First, I want to acknowledge that I am live streaming to you from Treaty 20, Michi-Sagig territory, in the traditional territory of the Michi, Sagig, and Chippewa nations, known as the Williams Treaty First Nations, which include Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Rama, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island. The area in which Fourth Line Theatre is situated is called Nojijiwanon, Ojibwe for place at the end of the rapids. The shores of the Odenabe River were a gathering place for Indigenous people. Odenabe, or Tonabe, means river that beats like a heart. We respect the treaties of peace and friendship and are thankful for the generosity of the Anishinaabe people for sharing their land with us. We would like to pay respect to the elders, past and present. We would like to acknowledge that the Williams Treaty First Nations are stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters, and that they continue to maintain and carry out this responsibility for those here now and for future generations to come. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge our season sponsor, Nexicom, for their continued support of Fourth Line Theatre, and Exit Realty Liftlock as our major sponsor, and Supporting Roles Interactive Training, Inc., for being the sponsor of our Epic Women's Directing Project. Thank you all. Some housekeeping notes. I just want to let you all know that your audio is muted. If you'd like to submit a question to Linda or myself, we'd be happy to answer your question during the Q&A session after the talk. To ask a question, simply click on the Q&A button on the menu at the bottom of your Zoom video window. You can type questions and our host, Lindy, will collect them and give them to us during the Q&A. Also be aware that if you mistakenly exit the webinar or have any technical difficulties, you can simply re-enter by clicking on the Zoom link we sent you earlier tonight. You can get back the same way you came. Be sure to follow our social media e-blasts and visit our website to register for our upcoming events. This Friday at 8 a.m., I will sit down with Anne-Marie Key, Head of School and Foundation at Lakefield College School, as part of the ongoing Friday morning business breakfast talk series. You can also visit Fourth Line Theatre's YouTube channel to view all of our virtual events after the live presentation. And now I would like to welcome Linda Kash.
There.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming and joining me tonight to chit chat.
Yeah, it's easier for me to be in character than to be myself in this forum. Even though I can teach classes and stuff, it's just different. It's really
I'm sure. So tell me first of all where you are right now. Can I ask?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto. I live near the St. Lawrence Market, and I spend my time here when my daughter is at Sunnybrook. She's a nurse, a neonatal nurse, and so I try and keep her company and make dinner for her and stuff. And she does, overnight shifts and stuff like that. She does 12-hour shifts, and then I make my way to Peterborough. And kind of, I'm in my other apartment where I have 2 dogs and 2 girls in Peterborough, and try and keep them buoyant and try and keep us all sort of in as closed a bubble as we can. Yeah. But I go back and forth.
Right. Yeah, I'm interested. I'll put a pin in that and I'll come back to how you split your time between the 2 cities. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask, and maybe you can just tell us, I want to go back to the beginning of you. So am I right? Is Wikipedia to be believed? You're born in Montreal?
I was born in Montreal, yep.
You were. Mm-hmm. And tell me, who are your parents?
My mom was an opera singer named Maureen Forrester, and she was a contralto. She was very, very well known worldwide. And my father was Eugene Kash, who was a conductor. He began a children's series of concerts in Ottawa. He worked for the NFB during the war, and he was a violinist. And he lived in 91, and he eventually taught at the Royal Conservatory.
And dad was born in Toronto, mom born in Montreal. Did I get that right?
Yes, Dad was born on the kitchen table at the corner of Dundas and Huron in 1912. My parents, there was a big gap between my
I know, I was going to ask. 18 years,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was 18 plus years
Yeah.
between them. And he was a confirmed bachelor. He was born to an Orthodox Jewish family. His mom, he was the oldest of 4 boys, and his mom was pregnant on the way over. So he was born as soon as they kind of got settled. They lived at Dundas and Huron. And yeah, he was a Toronto boy. Mm-hmm.
Your dad was in Europe a lot in the 30s in orchestras, right? He was playing. Do you have a sense, or do you know, did he have to escape sort of what that coming tide?
He was studying in Vienna, actually, and with a mentor, a teacher of his, and he was touring. He was kind of like a child prodigy. He was very, very, he was a very gifted violinist. He never played baseball. He never rode a bike. The second that he could hold anything, his parents handed him a violin and said, "You will play," because in those days, you know, European Jewish kids, they wanted, like the Irish wanted a priest, the Jews wanted a musician, for sure, a classical musician. So dad was the one, right? His other brothers became businessmen and were very successful in their own right, jewelry, and my one uncle sold nuts. He imported and exported nuts. And anyway, so Dad was in Europe just as the war was, just as things were brewing, and his mother actually had a correspondence with him. I don't know whether it was a letter or a telegraph, but she basically said, "Get out of Europe." And he had visited his relatives and my relatives in a small town in Poland called Pińczów. And I think Saul Rubinek's family actually was from Pińczów as well. And I have a fantastic picture of all of these people. It looks like a movie set, big beards, long coats, beautiful faces of my family. And they were all wiped out, every single one of them. And he got out just in time.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, your parents are extremely famous. I mean, maybe less so. Your mom's been dead since 2010 and your dad since 2004. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit less now, but in their time, incredibly famous entertainers. I know that's maybe because they're classical musicians, the wrong way to say it, but what was it like in that house, or many houses? If I
many houses.
Oh,
My mom, you know, was quite an eccentric, wonderful woman who was away in the peak of her success. When I was a child, she was away about she was home about 20 to 25% of the year. The rest of the time she was on tour. And, you know, it's pre-cell phones. We would all have to wait in line to speak to her on the phone. And there was always this weird delay when we were talking to her. There were 5 of us. I was 4. I'm number 4 or 5.
Okay, that was
one of yeah, so she was away a lot. And when she came home, well, first of all, I'll say when she was away, my dad, my mother was, you know, an incredibly gifted, talented musician who knew how to focus. If there was an opera or a recital, my mother would just focus at the piano by herself or with the accompanist or her coach. And, you know, you couldn't talk to her and she would just work on what she was doing and then she would perform. But otherwise, she loved to cook. She loved gardening. She didn't have the record player on. Music, she loved to sing, but music was not her life. My father would practice 3-4 hours a day. So the sound of my father's violin, the sound of working on, you know, 16 bars, the same 16 bars, you know, it would drive you a little batty, but my dad played and music was his entire life. I never really saw him without the violin or the fiddle, as he would call it, by his side. He was so devoted to this beautiful violin that was actually made around the time, I think it was made in the same year that Mozart was born. He had a beautiful violin. It wasn't a Stradivarius, it was called a Guadagnini, which was sort of the next level of violins. And every analogy, every conversation always came around to something about music, because that was my dad's life. So my mother was, you know, she was gifted and she was the best in her field. She had a very special range in her voice as a contralto, and she was well known for that. her voice changed like a boy's when she was about 15 years old. So she was a soprano, and she sang in the Presbyterian church that she belonged to. My grandmother made sure that she sang in the church. And then the voice just got lower and lower, and it cracked. And then she settled in on this beautiful, rich, lower range that could also reach very high notes. So she had a really special voice, which I did not appreciate at all when I was a kid.
Well, because that seems to make sense because she's your mom. So there's 5 of you, right? So Daniel, Gina, Paula, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Paula's my oldest sister, and then Gina, and then Daniel, and then myself, and then Susie.
And is it just you and Daniel who have followed in the footsteps in terms of
performance? Yes. My eldest sister just retired, but she was a special education teacher. She taught autistic young kids for 35 years. And my sister Gina actually went to film school at York, and she got pregnant and I think about 23 or 24, and she ended up staying home and raising 4 amazing kids. And then when she was 40, she said, I want to be an actor. And so she got an agent, and she started doing commercials. She was on a Monistat commercial for ages. I know she won't mind me telling that, but that was like her first gig after being a full-time mom. And she's been on Schitt's Creek, and, she's been on Kim's Convenience and stuff. She's done really well. And she also, when I taught at Humber, she was my assistant. When I created a show for CHCH called Go Girls, she was my assistant. She produced a short film that I directed and wrote, because she's just my left brain. They're all my best friends, but Gina is just a great working partner and loves all things film, and particularly comedy.
Amazing. So in that house, that sort of high art house, was it ever a question that you were going to be a performer?
When I look at the Super 8 silent films that my dad, would take, or mom would take when they were visiting us at camp or whatever, my brother and I are absolutely hogging the camera, like right in the face, right? We're the ones that are pushing my other sisters who were shyer, and we wanted the focus. But I used to perform for my grandmother, and force her to give me a standing ovation. She could barely stand, but she'd have to really, really introduce me. No, the beautiful, no, the talented, beautiful, the best. And I had a fake name. My name was Sharon Bolax. I have no idea why I came up with that name, but that was my professional name as a child. But I wasn't hellbound to performance. I was just a ham bone. So it wasn't a foregone that I was going to do it, which is kind of a good thing, because I didn't do it as a child. I was in shows at camp, and I did things here and there, but I didn't look at it seriously at all until I was about 18. And other things had fallen away. Possibilities had fallen away, because I was crap at math. I was really not focused at school, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I sure as shit didn't want to be a singer.
You do have a lovely voice, though. I just will say this, but would it be weird to sing in that house with your mom?
We did a lot of singing, but when it came to sort of me singing professionally, I think that was a bit tough. My brother also has a really, really good voice, and he took lessons with Louis Quilico, who is also a very famous opera singer, and he took lessons with him. So there was a possibility that Daniel was going to go that route, but I think we both decided that we needed to do our own thing. And Second City was perfect for me, because I could sing, I could write music, I could perform, but I always had my tongue firmly in my cheek. So I would never necessarily be compared to, my mother.
Yeah. And so at 18, is that what it is? Is it Second City? Because I was looking at something here that says in one of your resumes, a bunch of stuff at Magnus Theater in Thunder Bay.
Yep.
Then Second City, and then you're suddenly at Can Stage, and you're in for the pleasure of seeing her again. So can you just tell me, like, what happens at 18 that
Well,
and you're
18, I
winging.
went to Banff. I went to Banff with my brother. And so we went to the musical theater program at Banff, which was like a bit of a game changer. I was a pretty shy kid. My brother was a lot more outgoing, so he got the leads and stuff. And I was very happy to be in the chorus and very, very shy, but very happy on stage and very happy to, you know, try a little dance and have some singing lessons, although I was a bit intimidated by doing that. And the scene study, I kind of fell in love with it then. And then I tried for the National Theatre School following that summer, and I didn't get in because I had no idea how to work hard. I did my own, I didn't have a lot of help with homework and stuff. Dad was the age of everybody else's grandfather. My brother and my sisters were busy, and school was a challenge for me. I probably have a learning disability that was undiagnosed, as many actors do. And so school was just frustrating for me. And eventually in high school, I skipped a lot of classes. I smoked a lot of dope. I kissed a lot of boys. And it just went by the wayside. So I had no idea how to prepare for an audition. And you would think that I would, but my mother was in such a different field and dad was too, that they really didn't know either. So I traveled. I traveled with my best friend, Dawn. We put a knapsack on our backs and we went to Europe and we went to Amsterdam and we were in the south of France and decided, should we go to Italy or Spain? Let's go to Spain. And, it was that kind of year that was like, just the greatest with Euro rail passes and, putting ourselves in stupid harm's way. We're 18 years old. We're just so incredibly naive, but we learned so much. We loved it. And she ended up staying in London and going to theater school there. And then I came back to Toronto and I just started working because I couldn't get into school. I actually tried for Bristol Old Vic and she tried for RADA. I tried for a number of those Lambda, didn't get into any. I had some spark, but I had no discipline. I did not know how to attack script. I didn't know how to do it.
So you had, and I think this with us, a lot of actors, they have incredible charisma, but not the skill to back it up, right?
Work ethic. I didn't have a work ethic. I had no idea how to work. It took me a threat of you will be fired if you do not get here within the half hour at Second City once I was there. Like it took me a long, long time to learn how to work because it was a fairly anarchistic household, very creative, wonderful, diverse, fabulous friends and feathers and boas and singing around the piano. There were many good memories, but there was no consistency. There was no discipline because I was brought up by nannies. And if we didn't like them, we made it very easy for them to leave. And we went through a lot of them. There were 5 of us and we were, spoiled brats and very, very entitled, but we didn't have our mom. We didn't have someone who was really watching. And my dad was like forever, he was into his violin and he was into us behaving, but he had no idea how to discipline. Right. So it took me many years.
So you were applying, first at National Theatre School, and you were talking about the ones in the UK at RADA and the Old Vic. That's really kind of the serious hoity-toity theater, right? Straight theater.
Definitely where I wanted to be.
And so when did you discover comedy? How?
Well, I did the Limelight Dinner Theater for like 6 months, and I was a waitress, and I was in the show. So you'd, sort of put down the mystery meat, and then you'd do act 1, and then you'd have intermission, you'd change your clothes, you'd bus the table, you'd put the dessert down, you'd finish the show, you'd hopefully not get a walkout. It was $15 a show plus tips or something but I was in heaven. I loved it. And then it was like time to go to school. So the only school that said yes was the American Academy of Performing Arts, which was in Pasadena. So I went there and I was 20, I think. I think I turned 21 there. And when I came home for the summer, somebody told me about theater sports and Second City classes. And I started playing theater sports, and theater sports just started in Toronto. And theater sports was an absolute game changer for me. It was because theater sports was improvised teams competing against each other, very loosely competitive, very entertaining. It was at the Brigantine Room in at Harbourfront, and I just caught the bug. I also, fell for a guy who wanted to improvise, and I never went back to school. I just took workshops at Second City, and I played theater sports. And before I knew it, I was in the touring company at Second City. I did Deerhurst for a summer, and then I went to London, Ontario, and did the farm team there. And that was the next 4 years was all things Second City. And I eventually got onto main stage after my year in London, and I ate, lived, breathed, and slept with improv for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, and so is there a moment inside of that where the work ethic clicks in for you? Do you have a memory of when you went, "Oh yeah, I work really hard and I get here on time," and
It was you're going to get fired. You must be here like everybody else. You're not special. I mean, I worked with, some of the top performers. I worked with Mike Myers and Brian Stiles and Deb McGrath and John Hempel, and like I worked with just extraordinary performers. All of them really were extraordinary. Some of them made it, and some of them you don't know, but I know that they were extraordinary performers, and they got to work, and they got to work on time. And the other thing about Second City is, if you don't write yourself into the show, if you don't work hard on the improv in the third act, you don't get into the show for the next show, right? You write your own material, and the material comes from the improv scenes. So it's really important to be reliable so that people want to work with you. And it did teach me, I mean, my mother taught me that as well, because she was so extraordinarily kind and full of life and full of positive energy. So she taught me, like, success is when they want you back. Success is when they want you in the room. It doesn't matter how talented you are if you're not good to work with. And I don't mean a yes person. I mean, you're engaged and you're involved and you're passionate about it.
and
So yeah,
delivering
it
stuff
did
that
teach me. Second City absolutely taught me to be on time and to have a work ethic. But I didn't really learn about script until Canadian Stage, until I looked at, Blood Brothers was the first Canadian Stage show I did at High Park, which is where I met Michael Riley, my first hubby. And then I did Comedy of Errors and the next season, and I looked at the script. I had done The Tempest in Thunder Bay in between that time, but I'd never really attacked Shakespeare before, and that was a very big learning curve. That was a very hard summer. But it was so good. It was so challenging.
Wow. And then you did Fire, right? With Brian Richmond as well.
Fire, yeah. Well, I had done Of Mice and Men with Brian Richmond, and he actually really taught me a lot. He was he's not the easiest soul, but he was a very good director to me. He really, because I was so green when I played Curly's wife up in Thunder Bay, the coldest place on the planet to spend a couple winters. And he just believed in me. He saw I had one of those auditions where, you read the monologue from Curly's wife, and I knew it, and it was just him and it was just me. And it embodied me. Something happened. There was sort of this thing that happened in that moment. And it was the first time that I had really been overtaken by a character that wasn't of my making. And it was extraordinary. So that was a great experience of Mice and Men. And then I came back the year after and did The Tempest and Front Page. And yeah, script is a totally different, people are really frightened of improv, but getting it right for the playwright and really understanding what is required of you as an actor to tell the story that the writer wants to tell, the way the director wants it told, is quite challenging for me and forever interesting.
And when you were at Second City, was there any thoughts of Chicago or Saturday Night Live? Did anybody ever say
I
to you,
auditioned for Saturday Night Live. Yep.
"Oh, you did? Okay."
Yep. Warren Michaels was eating chicken. We were at the Rivoli. He was sitting at the table. He was like, "So, you think you're funny?" So I'm sitting at the table with him. I don't know what he wants. He's having his dinner. So I think what he expected was some kind of performance art, some kind of spark. And I'm a character actor and I'm a character improviser. As you can tell, like I'm a little bit of an awkward person in person. So for him to want me to just entertain him in that moment was like, I don't know what you want, buddy. Like, do you want me to take a piece of your chicken? I have no idea. I don't know what he wanted, but it didn't go well.
Right. And so when do you start kind of getting into film? Because, I look at your early film resume, you start kind of with the Ernest movies or a few.
Yes.
But how does that all come about? I'm so curious.
I think what happened was my 4th year of Second City, when I was leaving, I met Steve Smith, Red Green, and Steve hired me off of that stage to do Comedy Mill, which was a show that he and Morag had created. And so Peter Callahan and myself and Mag Ruffman were the part of the ensemble, and it was really fun. And Steve is also a huge mentor of mine because his budget was very low and he made magic with very little, and was so likable and let me write sketches, and just he was fabulous. Anyway, so from there, I think the first couple of gigs I got were the Ernest movies. I don't remember. I must have just auditioned for one, but before I knew it, I was in Vancouver, and Jim Varney was there. And actually, Ron James played my husband in the first one, which is called Ernest Rides Again, which is the slowest action movie you will ever see.
Really?
Yeah. It's a fun, very slow ride, but it was really fun. It was like hopping into a cartoon and being a cartoon. It was the closest to a Three Stooge that I will ever get. It was camp, and it was big, and it was fun, and it didn't take itself seriously at all. But it was an absolute hoot. And these boys were good old boys from the South. They were from Tennessee. The producer's name was Buster Cherry. I'm not kidding. That's his name. And they then had me come back, and I did Ernest Goes to School. And then years later, I did Ernest Goes to Africa, and we shot it in South Africa.
Really?
So they used and it was post-apartheid. It was like 2 years after. So it was very tense. It was a very weird time to be shooting film. And we shot in Sun City. So $1 million picture looked like a $15 million picture because our set was astounding, but it was tense. It was very, and I brought my youngest daughter, Dylan, with me, and Michael. And it was a bit tense to be there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you've done comedy and you did all the classes at Second City. You never went back to Pasadena. So when you got the first sort of film and television work, was it again you not knowing what to do and figuring it out as you go?
Kim, I was terrible. I wasn't just no, I was terrible. I didn't understand anything. Like I was so green. I had been an extra on The Littlest Hobo, so I had been on a set. And by the way, we shot The Littlest Hobo in Dundas West Station, and I was just about to get my actor card because I think I'd done a little other, a few other extra things. So I was just about to get my actor card, and I had 2 more credits or whatever. But we were in Dundas West Station. They wrapped at 4 a.m, and I was so flippin' tired that I lay down on the floor of Dundas West and put a newspaper over my head because I can't stand fluorescent lighting. And they left me there. They forgot me because I was under the paper. And the next thing I knew, I took the paper and I looked up, and people were like walking over me because the subway was open and they forgot about me. But I did get my actor card, and that was their apology. So there you go.
Well, and I think it's good to get your actor card on The Littlest Hobo. I thought you were going to tell me that you shot something at Buttonville, because I'm convinced everything with Littlest Hobo is shot at Buttonville Airport. I don't know, but it feels like anything I see. So you and Michael are together, and you have Dylan at this point.
Yes.
Is it with Michael that you make the transition to Los Angeles, or where does the transition to Los Angeles happen?
Michael Riley, who is my favorite Canadian actor, he did a film with a great director named Yves Simoneau out of Quebec. And they did a great film that you got to see called Perfectly Normal with Robbie Coltrane. Beautiful, surreal, bizarre, wonderful, just a really wonderful film, which opened at the Toronto Film Festival. And on the heels of that, Michael knew like this was the time to go. And I had been at Second City and I had done quite a bit. And I thought, is it the time for me to go too? I guess it is. So we loaded up the Hyundai. Oh no, it's one of the first Hyundais. Anyway, it was like a Fred Flintstone car. We had the television in the back. We had mattresses. We just like we're driving like this, and we would have to take the TV into various motels as we drove our way across to Los Angeles. And he had an agent pretty well right away, and I did not. And we had one car, and we lived in Marina Del Rey, which was wonderful. We didn't have Dylan then. We didn't have our daughter. She was born in Los Angeles. And for a year, I and he worked in Toronto, and the cat had like this awesome apartment in Los Angeles because we just didn't get work. I finally got an agent because I was so frustrated, and I'm not a very good liar. I'm fairly obvious when I'm fibbing, but I was so flippin' frustrated that I didn't have an agent, that this one agency, they had me in for a meeting, and I said, I don't know if I want this size because Susan Smith is interested in me, as is the artist agency, but I'm not sure I want to go really big. I may go William Morris. I just was lying through my teeth about who wanted me, and they had all rejected me, but I was so done that I just BS'd my way through the meeting. By the time I got to the elevator, they were like running after me to have me as a client. And it was like, I can't believe I did this. Like, it's not like me to do. But I was like, I don't care. I need an agent. Because when you get to LA, and even in Toronto, the agent is the thing. You got to start. I can't show you what I can do unless I am represented.
You got to get in the room.
Oh, it's very hard to
put
do.
you in the room.
Yeah.
So you get the agent, you lie your pants off to get the agent, which I admire. And do you book right away? Like, what happens?
I did not book right away. No, I did lots and lots of auditions. And again, I was green. I'm suddenly in this new environment, which is Los Angeles. So everything is like a 45-minute drive away. And, you walk into the room, and instead of a couple of people that look like you, there's like 20 people that look like you. And you suddenly realize, oh my God, I think that's what I look like. And of course, LA is the town of beautiful, beautiful people. So I often, was in the wacky room. I know I have these looks, but there I was wacko. Like, I was the somewhat attractive, but funny. And funny was my ticket. Funny was my ticket in. There's no way I could have competed dramatically, but I knew I was funny. And they knew that Canadians were funny. They often in the room would ask me, why are Canadians so funny? And I could never really answer the question. And eventually I just kind of resented it. I didn't really understand the question, but I knew I could get in there and be funny. And so one of the first gigs I got was Seinfeld.
It was that, oh my God. And it was big right from the beginning. Like, when were you on?
Yeah, I was on, it was season 4. So it was a hit. It was really gaining momentum. And I was in, there was an area in Malibu that was a wonderful place to body surf. So Michael and I were body surfing, and I went to the payphone because it was like early 90s, right? There were no cell phones. And I just checked my messages, and it was like, you've got to get to the Valley right now. There's a Seinfeld audition. You have to get there by such and such a time. And I had literally like 40 minutes to get there. So I ran to the car, said, I'll talk to you later to Michael, changed in the car, got over the Valley into Paramount, I think, the studios. And by the time I got to the audition, like, there was sand in my hair and elsewhere, and I couldn't believe I made it. So I was not nervous at all, because I couldn't believe I made this audition. So I got the part because everybody else was freaking out, because Larry David was there and Jerry was there. And but I got it because I was like, I can't believe what I just did. It was crazy. And it was fun. It was fun to be on that set.
Did they film in Los Angeles or film in New York?
Los Angeles.
Oh, they did. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you did a ton of stuff, right? Like you did a lot of television. I mean, you did Everybody Loves Raymond. You did a lot of stuff. If you
Yeah, like the truth is I went to Los Angeles with the dream that I would redefine myself, because as I said, from the beginning, Second City, I fell into Second City. I fell into comedy. I didn't feel like I wasn't the funny one around the table. I wasn't a jokester. I was clumsy. I was awkward, and I was cute because I made the best of my clumsiness and awkwardness, but I wasn't clever. I wasn't fast on my feet. So comedy was sort of, I kind of fell into it. And so when I went to Los Angeles, I thought, no, I want to do Law and Order. I want to do LA Law. I want to do that kind of stuff. But invariably, I was put up for the sitcoms of the times. Sybil Shepherd had a sitcom. I did that. Sabrina the Good Witch, the original one, I did that. Third Rock from the Sun. Ellen DeGeneres had a show. She had a sitcom. I did hers.
Were you on something with Jean Smart from Designing Women? Was that?
Yes, and that was really great, because that was created by Peter Tolan, who is he did Larry Sanders, and he's done a ton of stuff. Anyway, so Jean Smart played Martha Stewart, and I was working in the office, and I was I turned a raw turkey into a lovely, what do you call it? When someone dresses up the props to make them look delicious. Anyway,
I would call them a food fluffer, but I suspect
like a food fluffer. Yeah. And the interesting thing, I always said that role was super challenging, because I always had maybe 2 jokes per slot before the commercial. So I was like the Murray of Mary Tyler Moore. I was at my desk, I'm listening, they're getting the jokes, and then it's Murray's line, or it's my character's line, Linda's line. And that's really hard not to make a meal out of, because you get 2 shots at a laugh, and you've got a studio audience to perform for, and you're not Jean Smart. So, you don't have that automatic, oh, we're so thrilled to have her in the room. It's all based on, you got to get it right. So that was really challenging and really, really fun. And that lasted for a season. I did another show with a comedian named Rondell Sheridan, and that was fun. I mean, he wasn't a big enough star to get a good studio audience, so they paid the studio audience to come, and they gave them booze as well.
Oh.
He was Black. It was primarily a Black show, and the only people that were interested looked very skinheady to me, and in the audience, it was a weird vibe. It was a very weird show, but that went for 7 shows on NBC. I think it was NBC, and then suddenly the comedy, or not Comedy Network, the CW picked it up. So suddenly, for no reason at all, we had cleavage. Our dresses were short. I was a pediatrician in it. There was no reason for me to have a short skirt, but we were on the CW. So suddenly it was like, okay, I guess it's the same dialogue, but it's looks
a little bit more TNA on the CW.
Yes.
It's all about the letters. And so do you imagine at that point in your career, like you don't have Dylan yet, right? Did you have her yet?
She's born in 95 and we moved there in 91.
So she's imminently coming. But did you imagine you'd be in Los Angeles the rest of your life? And did you aspire to have your own show? What was your thinking? Like what was the team around you with you trying to make happen?
I think I was trying to get a show, because I think everybody who's in that world of sitcoms and or series, you want a show that'll hit. So when I worked with Jean Smart, which was like a total pleasure, we certainly hoped we would have 5 years, and we did not. And Rondell's show, was almost dead in the water as soon as it started. And I auditioned for Frasier, for Roz.
Oh.
And it was myself, and it was Lisa Kudrow and Laurie Gelpin. And actually Lisa Kudrow got it. And then was let go. And then she went to Friends. And I blew that audition so badly. I was so nervous.
Like the audition or the callback?
Like the callback, like the final, Kelsey Grammer's there, all the big wigs are there. And every time I was in LA and just about to make it like real big, I would sabotage it. I would blow it. And I'm good at auditioning normally, and in auditions in LA, I would do well. But when it was a big thing, I would sabotage it. So part of me sort of thought that I was too afraid, but another part of me, because when I moved back to Canada, I was flown to go to network a number of times for big projects, and I blew it every time. And I can't help thinking that I didn't want it. I can't help thinking that because I have a weird relationship to fame on that level, because my mother was in her world there, right? And my father was a consummate musician who never quite, after his youth, never quite made it, but was so passionate about his work. So there was this strange conflict, I think, an inner conflict about what is success? What is fame? What is success when your kids don't know you that well? And I think one of the gifts that my parents both gave me was that they loved family. My mother loved family. She just wasn't around. And my father was beyond devoted to us, even in his later years. He never missed a concert or my brother's football games and stuff. So I was always struggling with, I want family. I want my kids to know me, and I want to know them. And so I think I sabotaged the opportunity to go real big.
Were you aware of it at the time, or is this realization with distance, Linda?
Well, I eventually, I remember I was living on a farm in Cavan. I was with Paul by then. We had 3 beautiful children and an apple orchard. We had 52 acres in flippin' paradise. It was absolutely gorgeous. And they flew me to LA to do this thing that Christopher Guest was directing, that the guy that created Arrested Development, what's his name? Can't remember his name right now, but he was great. And I knew I was first choice for it. And I remember I was in Beverly Hills at this hotel, looking out the window, watching the cars go by, going, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. And of course, the next morning I did the audition and I didn't get it. But I just remember because I also think that Paul was not interested in going to LA. So I knew that if I was going to do this, if this was going to happen, this was going to be a weird situation where I'd have to go back and forth and wouldn't want to uproot my kids. And, so it was a real struggle, life versus career. And I knew I had potential, and incrementally, had I stayed in LA, I was there for 7 years, it would have happened for me, whatever it is that I was after. But I don't think I wanted it. And then Dylan was born, and it was not the easiest place to bring a kid up either. And my parents were both not well. So it was like, okay. And also Michael and I were not doing well. So it was time for a change, which is why.
See, I have so many questions for you. Okay, so my first question is, we'll put a pin in Michael and you, because I want to talk about that progression to the beautiful Paul O'Sullivan. Is Christopher Guest. How do you find him? How does he find you? I mean, obviously, Waiting for Guffman, I rewatched the scene in the Chinese restaurant the other night where you're fabulous, but you kind of just get out of the way of Catherine O'Hara and Fred and Eugene, right? Like you just get out of the way. But I'm curious how you find them and how they find you.
I had played Eugene's wife many times in various specials, and there's a short film called The Enigma of Bobby Bittman, and I played his wife in that. And we just were friends, and he recommended me to Christopher Guest. And so I had a meeting with Christopher Guest, and of course they were looking for improvisers, and I had continued to improvise in LA and as much as I could. And I had an hour slotted with him, and 7 minutes after I left the audition or the little talk and just went, oh shit, that was awful. Like, honest to God, it wasn't, once again, it was like Lorne Michaels. The man was so awkward. I was awkward. when it comes to those moments, I can't really step up because I'm not quite sure how to read the room and what people want. And I'm not that kind of actor. I need character. I need something to hang on to. And I got it. And I don't know why. But then when I was in the makeup chair, we shot in Nashville and I was pregnant, actually, with Dylan. And the makeup artist told me she had the worst interview of her life with Christopher Guest. And then I realized across the board, oh, he's awkward. He's awkward with everyone. And he was one of the best storytellers. You know, when you meet a genius, right? And there are not very many moments in your life where you go, this is a different human being. This is a different being entirely. Not socially, deft at all, but tell a story, his whole face would transform. He would become the character. Like, I've never laughed so much at someone just simply telling a story. He had funny, like, throughout his bloodstream. And he was so smart, and he was so well read, and probably a photographic memory, but not a social human being. And wasn't there to make your time comfy by any stretch. And that's a separate skill. So what I did was Michael actually taught me a technique where he went to the Church of Scientology, and he told them that he wanted to join. So he took a questionnaire, and the questionnaire is 101 questions. And Kim, they're the greatest questions you could ever want to ask of a character, because they're all scenario based, and they're questions that you don't ask yourself necessarily. You wouldn't come up with those questions. And he learned that idea when he was working on Perfectly Normal. So I took that idea and I copied the questions. So I would walk on the beach in Santa Monica, and in those days we had a dictaphone, and I would just answer the questions. I would just answer all the questions, 101 questions about my character. And then when I was in the cab, which was going to take me, all I knew was we were Jewish. We were the only Jews for 500 miles. He was a dentist, Eugene's character. And he was going to be an actor in it. And so as the only Jewish people in town, I thought, I don't want to play, George's mother. I don't want to play a harpy. I don't want to play that kind of Jew, because I had before, and I do that really well, and it's funny. But there's another facet of that, and I want to be beyond devoted to my husband, and whatever he chooses in his life, I'm there for him, and I think he's the most talented person in the world, Eugene's character. So that was sort of what I decided was I was going to be nothing but supportive, and that was good for me to hang on to. And then on my way, the cab driver in LA was taking me to the airport and goes, how are you doing today? It's such a sunny day. Look at it out there. And he went, yeah, it's really, really, really sunny. Where are you going today? You're going to Texas? Oh my, I've never been to Texas in my life. And I went, holy shit. And I opened my purse and I just turned on the dictaphone, and I just talked to him and listened to his voice. And it was like, that's her voice. That's her voice. She's Midwestern, and she never, ever, ever loses her temper, because she just is so devoted to family and his talent, and whatever, if he was the plumber, she'll hold the wrench, right? That kind of character. But I had the sound. So by the time I got to Austin, it was like, this is glorious. It was glorious because it was all improvised.
And the first time you did the voice, what was guest's response to what you brought to the
Very
table?
supportive. Very supportive, because she didn't break, because Linda wasn't there. And there's no way Linda was going to be there, because if Linda was there, Linda would be very nervous. So I had to be Rose Pearl, because I was in the midst of a lot of very big wigs, right? So, and that's always been my philosophy. And as a teacher, that's also, I say, if you go 100% or 110% in character, it doesn't matter. You're going to be fine, because you go 80%, 20% is watching what you're doing and is criticizing and is sabotaging the performance. Just get 100% in it and you'll be okay. And that's no easy feat, but it's a surrender that Christopher also taught me to, Christopher Guest, because the surrender, the the ability to absolutely transform himself in a very gentle, authentic way, not caricature, was so magnificent. And there are actors that do it, right? And I can do it. It's not consistent, but when I do it, I know in retrospect it happened. It's like a possession.
Right. I like that. Did you guys know, or did you know while filming it, this is going to become what it is? Like, it is so many, like Waiting for Guffman, and of course, Best in Show and Mighty Wind, all of those films that you were part of. Did you know while you were doing it how special it was, and then how big it was going to be?
I think we knew it was special because it was improvised, but I also know that he had to ask permission of Castle Rock for every film, because there was so much footage. Every single one of I don't know about Mighty Wind, and I don't know about the later films, but Guffman had like 55 hours of footage to choose from. And there was a map, more or less a map of what he wanted, but there was no script. So that's a lot of commitment for a studio to say yes to when there's no script for them to look at. And even though you're Christopher Guest, it's a very, very big ask. So the money was not huge. And in fact, Guffman was a really big success. And then I came back and I was actually pregnant with Tilly when I did Best in Show. And everybody got basically minimum wage for it. Like, I don't know what Catherine and those guys got, but I didn't get paid very much. Just like if you're on a hit, you don't make a lot because everybody knows. Like Seinfeld didn't pay well because everyone wants to do Seinfeld. Married with Children, you get paid well because everyone's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, right? So, but I got a check in the mail. It's the only time I've ever gotten a bonus, and it was $10,000. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just before Tilly was born. And it was just like a crazy gift, but it was their way of saying, we know this is a very special thing and this thing is making money. So we want to share the wealth, which was like very nice.
So
but
tell me,
I don't think they knew.
Right.
Not stuff. They didn't know.
It's amazing. The work's amazing. Your work is amazing in it. Between Guffman and Best in Show, and being married to Michael and pregnant with Dylan, and coming back and being pregnant with Matilda, Tilly, what happens, or the light version, the PG version, and how do you meet Paul?
The PG version, it's really, it's just really hard to describe the end of a marriage that you think is going to last forever. It's really, I know, like you have different experience. No, I'm not going to get into that, but I think it had seen its time, but I also think, in honesty, that Michael should have gone to New York, because Michael is a character actor, is more or less a method actor. And I think New York would have understood him. And LA is a place where we want this over and over and over and over again. And the challenge is you got to get big enough to go, I want to show you something different, but you can't ask for diversity until you make it. Whereas Michael, there was no way he wanted to be a cookie cutter actor. And I got to do various characters, but I was still on the sitcom hamster wheel and perfectly happy to be there. And he wasn't. So he wasn't, it didn't serve him in the way that I think New York would. And in the meantime, we grew apart, which sucked, really sucked. Nobody likes that. And my parents also my mother was getting dementia, which was like, threw me for a major loop. More in retrospect than now, I know it was bigger than I thought. So I think that my mother's illness was another symptom of the end of the marriage, because I was flipping crazy because she was losing her mind, and that she was everything to me.
Yeah, when your wife loses their mind, you're unmoored, right? You're unmoored.
Absolutely unmoored. Yeah. I mean, my dad, was my best friend by then. And that was, when he was ill, that was also brutal. But I went back to Toronto to be with them. And I produced a show that I co-created with Steve Smith called Go Girl for CHCH. And Dilly was a tiny baby. And I loved it, and I ran the show, and he gave me so much responsibility, and it was wonderful. But I was also, barfing in the bathroom because I was so stressed out because my personal life was going by the wayside. So I was, superwoman, and then I was not superwoman in private because things were falling apart. And we split up, and I stayed in Toronto, and he stayed in LA for a little longer. And in the meantime, I had met Paul years before because I had directed Second City. So I directed at the Fire Hall. It was called, what was it called? Up Against the Walmart. That's right. So I directed Up Against the Walmart, and Paul was so magnificent. He's so funny in this thing. And I had a stellar cast. And I just thought he was the bee's knees. I just adored him. We became very, very good friends. And I noticed that he was a fabulous father as well. And I had met Denise, and, it was wonderful. And I went back to LA, and then things fell apart. And then I was back in Toronto. And then I heard through the grapevine that Paul was single. And we got together real quick. And we got pregnant real quick. It was one of those things that happens in most of my life where I don't kind of wait, it just goes. But I was also of a certain age that it was like, babe, I don't know if this is going to work out, but I need another baby. So we're going to do this, and then we'll see if this works out, which is crazy. But I didn't have time because I was getting a little older. And so I got pregnant. I actually had a miscarriage. And then 2 months after my miscarriage, we got pregnant. We had two.
That's Tilly?
Yes. And then we were in Toronto for a few years, and then 9/11 happened, and it freaked me out, and it freaked him out. And we decided, how do you want to live? What is life? What do we want life to be? And we both decided we want to move to the country and make it a go on a farm.
Okay, so I'll ask you about that right now. How did you pick? So you ended up in Bethany you don't live there anymore, so you can say Drenol Road in Bethany.
Road, Leonard spelled backwards, Drenol. Yep.
Yeah. Which is now a beautiful apple orchard that I went to this year during COVID. We found it, and I was like driving up Drenol, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's going to be Paul and Linda's place. And the people who bought you, they're sold.
Lovely people. We actually I have a connection with them.
Yeah. I know. That's what they said.
Yeah.
So how did you find Bethany?
Because Paul's sister lived in Omimi, and we used to spend our weekends in Omimi. And after 9/11, we just thought, why are we spending our weekends in Omimi and our days in Toronto? Why don't we switch it up? And Paul, as talented, as brilliant as Paul was, he claimed not to be an ambitious man. He claimed that he wanted to be a farmer and drive a tractor and cook and bring up children. And, I was still quite an ambitious, busy actor. And it was like, are you sure that you want this kind of lifestyle? Because I'm not sure, because I don't know how the hell to live on a farm. But this sounds fantastic to me because it allowed a home base and it allowed me to go work. So similar to my mom and my life with her. And there was a house dad because Michael was very busy and, his star was rising. So he was not a full-time dad. So we kept that as even as we possibly could. But Paul was sort of the rock because he was home.
I'm interested. I wonder if Paul positioned himself that way, what I know of Paul, so that any defeat in the business world, he can go, well, I don't want that anyways, or that's
Probably.
not what I crave.
Probably. Yeah, probably. I think if he had the time on the planet, I think he would have focused more heavily on his work and his talent. And he was a very devoted father. He was a fabulous cook. When he died, I thought the kids were going to starve because I do now, but I didn't cook. But I think he was much more ambitious than he said he was. And so as much as he loved life on the farm, I think it got hard. It got hard to be Mr. Kash, just like it got hard for my dad to be Mr. Forrester.
Well, it's interesting how those parallels happened in your life with your mom and your dad, and then you and Paul. Now, okay, so I want to, we'll get there eventually, but I am curious that you've had all this extraordinary success to this point. You come back because your parents are aging, and you know, you're probably one of the 10 more famous Canadian performers, and it's because of this bloody commercial.
Fantastic, eh?
It's so weird. Like it's not
Beyond weird.
there's not necessarily name recognition to you being the Philadelphia cream cheese angel, but across this country, except really young people because it's been off for a while, but more recently, of course, you've been back on for a bit. Everybody knows who you are. If you say, well, you know, Linda Kash, the Philadelphia cream cheese angel. I am curious. First of all, I'd love to know how you got it. And it was 10 years, right? Is that right?
No, 16.
60. Shut up.
1994 until 2011. It was crazy.
It's amazing. So I'm curious about how you got it. So will you tell me that story? And then I want to ask you if you were always happy doing it when you wanted to be on Law and Order, when you wanted to be at RADA, when you wanted to direct and be in and have your own series, and when you had been waiting for Guffman. So that's two big questions there. One is, how did you get it? Let's start there.
Normal audition, just one of you know, I don't know how many people they saw. I know that it was between, at one point, me and Karen Posey, which makes me laugh because it's like she would have been an adorable angel. It just happened that they chose me. They did tell me I was going to fly, which I never have, which bugged me. But one commercial became, and that one commercial that I did, the first one was like in an airplane hangar. It was more like the last one that I did in 2020, where it was like, oh, it's so flippin' heavenly. Like there was no CGI. You step on the set and it was heaven. It was absolutely beautiful. And I am this big in the camera because the commercial is heaven and the commercial is that crazy good soundtrack. And then there's this, you know, impish kind of character who is slightly misbehaving. So it was a really brilliant campaign that just kept finding another spot and then another spot and then another spot. And eventually I just was a billboard. And I got it, not exclusivity, but I got a contract, like I got a more proper contract as the spokeswoman, but I didn't for 5 years. So for 5 years, I just was, oh, there's another spot. I got another spot. And yeah, I would get a raise or whatever, but it wasn't a campaign like it became because it just finally turned into a living. So it became my living, which was so rare for an actor to say, I have a guaranteed income and I'm only working a couple of days a year. I am the luckiest actor on the planet. I am becoming a very lazy actor though, because money is a great motivator, right? And if you have that sort of basic income that is like, nope, we're going to be okay. And the kids, you know, we can have 3 kids and we can take trips and stuff like that, but it makes you lazy. And the year that it ended, I once again learned how to work hard again because I had to, because I was the breadwinner at that point too. Yeah. So quite scary. So you know, there's always a flip side to that wonderful opportunity. And it was. I will always be grateful to those guys. That the campaign is so classy as well. I mean, God knows I could have been, you know.
I know. No, it's totally classy. And that's
right, witch. I could have been anything else. I could have been anything, but I was the cream cheese angel. It's like, you know, it's pretty easy to make that work.
It's just so iconic. Like, is it weird to be an icon for a commercial, or is it a dream come true? I mean, you've talked a bit about it, but I am curious.
No, you know what it is? When you get known for something and strangers stop you on the street, it is, to me, always a surprise. I don't feel famous. I don't feel, because maybe the nature of why I'm known is so grounding, if you will. You know what I mean? It's like I sell cheese and it's good cheese and it's fun, but
it's not even cheese, it's cream cheese.
It's cream cheese. 60% less fat than butter or margarine. No, it keeps me humbled and it keeps me in this surreal world of life is so bizarre. And for people to sort of, I've been to funerals where people go, Mommy, it's an angel. Like I've sat like Santa so that people can, in the garb, so that, you know, people can get their pictures taken with their babies. It's a weird little gig and really fun and keeps life kind of surreal and silly. And I don't take it for granted, but I certainly don't take it seriously. And I love that people feel comfortable to approach me. It's hugely important. Everybody always did that with my mom. That's another thing she taught me. She never played the diva, ever, ever, ever. Anybody could approach my mother. I mean, she was eccentric beyond belief. She would tip the gas jockey. Like she was so generous, it was insane. But she was kind, and she was with everybody. She was never elitist. She sang next to Reagan, and she kibitzed with the guy at the corner store who she knew by name. So I'm really grateful for that. But at the same time, I wanted to be in Adam McGoyan films. I wanted to do like bizarre, fun, strange. I wanted to be challenged as an actor. And I think it did maybe close some doors because of a perception that I was light and fluffy.
Yeah. Like the cream cheese. So, I have this first memories of you. So you and Paul, I think the first time I ever met you, and I was a bit starstruck, was you came and workshopped Alex Plush Golden's The Right Road to Pontypool.
Oh my God. It's such a good play. It's such a good play. I loved it. And I loved the workshop too. Yeah, that was fun.
It was great. And so that was the first time. I think it was the second workshop we'd done. The first one was Teresa Tova.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you next week, and Paul Souls, and then you and Paul. And so you guys were sort of living in Bethany on Knoll Road, but you weren't really involved in the Peterborough scene too much, like art scene. And then I don't know can you trace a moment where you guys got very involved, or was it Paul more than you? Like suddenly you had Papa, you had your, Peterborough Academy of Performing Arts, and you guys were very, very involved.
Very, very involved. It was I would say 2007, we opened our school. And I think we started improvising I think Paul created Impros versus Joe's around that time. And he got very involved with Impros and the Gordon Best and a fabulous group of improvisers. And we got into that scene, which was really, really fun. Also, I had worked with Randy Reed and done New Stages with Steve Ross. That's where I did For the Pleasure of Seeing Her Again. And I did quite a few productions. And Paul and I did Harvest with New Stages. So
Ken, what's his name? Ken.
That's a really fun play.
It is a really fun play. Yeah, we looked at it. Yeah, I like about 2 minutes into saying that you did Pleasure at Can Stage, I was like, and that's totally wrong. It was at New Stages, and it was Daryl Cloran directing it. And so then I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I was like, and I'm just beating myself up here. I was like, at some point I have to say it. So I'm glad you said it. Was it because you have just become, and maybe this is just you have become such an icon of Peterborough. You have Cluster Forks now, and you do so much with Papa, and you've done so much with New Stages. And I'm just curious about what that's like to be part of this sort of smaller community while still going off. And I mean, Linda, your resume, your film and television resume is cuckoo bananas.
It's pretty cuckoo bananas, but it's also because I'm a guest star. I'm periphery woman, which is great because I get to fly in, do Batwoman, fly home, right? Like I'm not there the whole time. I haven't done a series in a very, very long time, but it allows me to, go on a bunch of sets and work with a bunch of awesome people, because after 3 months, I'm done, right? But community is everything to me. Community is everything to all my siblings. My brother's in Leaside and very involved with his wife and kids. My other sister's the queen of Cabbagetown. She has the film festival there, and she's very, very involved. My other sister's in High Park, and that's her area. And Susie's, in Witchwood Park, and super, super involved with the art scene and everything. So Peterborough is it's now my home, and I love Toronto. I grew up here. I adore Toronto, but my community and the people where, like, I'm constantly saying, I got to stay here. This is silly. This is where my work is. Toronto is where but then I go up the 115 and I get super excited to get home, and I look at the trees, and I love the water, and I need this, I need the space, and I need the green, but I need also the people. And I don't feel like a star there. I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm on any other level. I feel like I'm invited to do fourth line stuff, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I just like to be creative, but I also feel like I am living a life that my mother did not, and that is, I get to stay, and I get to really know my friends and really know my kids, and go to student meetings, parent teacher meetings. I get to do that stuff. So I'm very proud of the balance that I have struck. And I was forced to do even more because Paul died. And then none of the career stuff mattered.
Right.
And I didn't even know if I would ever do it again. I lost my mojo. I thought I lost my funny. I didn't care. I cared about getting through the day.
I'll just ask you quickly about it. So there is this photo, and I think it's from maybe around 10 p.m. on May 17th, 2012. It's maybe in the green room or in the dressing room of Sisters Rosenzweig, the opening night, right? Am I getting this right?
Lost in Yonkers.
Lost in Yonkers. Okay. So there's this incredible photo of you and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And was he, I think, maybe wearing his quintessential hat.
It was taken by Naomi Sneakus.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And she sent it to me. And it was the last photo for sure. That was the night before he died.
Yeah. And so he died on the 18th of May, 2012, right?
Yes.
And separate from the grief, and not to make it separate, but I can't even imagine your life was one thing on the 17th and it became something else on the 18th. But I'm interested in terms of your career, how long you didn't work for, and what was the first thing back?
I was doing Magic 96.7, that is now Oldies 96.7, which was a great gig. I was on the radio. I was with Dan Duran, one of my besties, and Deb Crossan on news. Like, we just had a great time, and woke up at 6 a.m. and, I did Fast Facts from the Famous. And that also really brought me into the community, and also allowed me to drive my kids to school and do that stuff. So I stopped, I think, for about a month, and then Dan encouraged me back on air. And at the same time, Ron James, who I'd done his show many times, and he kind of forced me to come back. And I will always be grateful to Ronnie, and always be grateful to Dan, because they just eased me back. And I didn't have to be great, and I didn't know what I would be. And I turned out to be okay. Like, I could put my professional hat on. I could be funny again. I probably had a little bit of more dark humor, and it probably gave me a bit of an edge. But it came back because it's technique, and it's sort of also my life's blood. So it was like, initially it was like, my life is over. I can't teach anymore. I don't know what I'm doing, to maybe I could do the radio. Maybe I could still do guest spotting. Maybe I can still teach. And I was going to close the school. And I, in fact, gave up my lease to Ryan Kerr, and he, and Theater on King was born, which is fantastic. And I just rented space from him. And I found that it was very important for me to keep the school going, and it was very important for me to continue teaching. And that was part of Paul's legacy, and part of honoring him was not falling down. Simple as that. Part of honoring someone that goes is you don't fall apart. And part of honoring my family is, guess what, lady? You have to be the pillar. You have to be the strong one. So my grief and my fragility was quite private, and I had a lot of help. David Kennedy from hospice saved my life. He saved my life.
Wow.
He did. He saved my life. I always tell people, like, go to hospice. Go. It's a new territory. I had lost my father. I'd lost my mother. This is different. This is different. And I needed navigation. I needed help. And I needed to be strong for my kids, and I needed to learn how to cook.
How did you learn how to cook? Because you've mentioned that more than once.
Just by doing. I can't, if my kids talk to you about my cooking, they would tell you how many times the alarm would go off, how many times I would burn stuff. It took me a long time, but I'm good now. I can do it. I can do a lot of stuff. I didn't even touch cat poo. Like, he would pick up the poo. He would pick up the dog poo. I used to retch. I was a princess. And I couldn't be a princess anymore. I got stuff done. I learned how to replace a toilet, take the damn thing off, put the O-ring on, stick to it. Like, I've done some stuff that makes me like more proud than I can tell you. I survived something that I wasn't sure I would, and I did, and we did. I couldn't do it without my kids.
Without your kids, yeah. And you and Michael are really close too. Is it fair to say? Like, and Gab and Paul, Paul's first wife, Denise. Sorry, you guys are so close, right? I mean, it is. You have made the blended family look easy. I'm sure it's not, but you make it look easy and wonderful.
I think we all made an agreement well before Paul died that we were going to make this a family unit. And by the way, that is how my parents split up too. My dad never missed a holiday. He never missed a birthday, and they were separated from the time I was 14.
Because it's interesting, because I read that they separated in the mid 70s, but then I was reading your dad's obit, and he still mentions your mom in it. Or not him, but you guys do. You guys do, obviously.
Yeah, no, he loved her for the rest of his life, and she was very respectful and very sweet to him. They were really good to each other, and we are really good to each other. Michael is a good friend. Denise is a really good friend. I see her all the time, and the kids have two moms, and they had two dads. And Michael does the best he can to compensate, but of course it's impossible. It's impossible. So the kids really do. The two girls, he's always present. We're talking about it all the time, and they still are in a lot of turmoil about losing him the way they did, but he's in the conversation.
That's nice. And so tell me what is next? What's the next 10 years in your wildest dreams, or what do you imagine?
I feel like I've come to a point with my children where they are flying solo, which is great, because that's where you want them to be. I had a tumultuous time with my youngest. Anyone can call me if you're having a tumultuous time. And I wrote a play about it because it was a very tough time to go through menopause at the same time when a child is going through grief and adolescence. She's come to a level where it's like, it does end, the turmoil ends, and she's this fabulous human being, as are the other women, as are my other daughters. And so I feel like now I can take on some stuff. I have my mind, unlike my mother at my age, who was losing it well before my age. Like, it was postmenopausal dementia. It was very early onset. So of course, every time I forget my keys, I go, oh shit. But I am so ready to take on bigger challenges, and I'm not as afraid of being away. And thank God for Zoom and being able to communicate the way we do. But I want to do something big. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not going to sabotage. I'm not going to talk myself out of it. Because I am very, very brave, and much braver than I was. And I'm seasoned. Yeah. I worked this stuff out, so I'm not afraid. So when I read for stuff, I read for big stuff, and it doesn't scare me anymore. But I also want to continue to teach. I love, love, love children and teaching children. And I love offering improv to children and adults. Like, Cluster Fork has been wonderful over COVID because I get to ply my trade, and we get to hire people to do the best possible teaching on a platform that is like, it's awesome. And I want to continue teaching, and because I think you reach a certain age, and it's like, it's time to share it. And eventually I hope I've got the dough to just do it all for nothing, because I'll do it for the rest of my life.
There was this amazing moment. So I got the pleasure of finally directing you in Bev Cooper's The Other. So it was a
Oh my
Christmas
God, that was so much fun. So freezing and my back went out, but it was so fun.
so freezing. But there was a moment, we were at St. Thomas's Anglican Church in Peterborough, and I guess that was a break or a lunch break, and you were sitting with one of the young volunteer cast members, some I won't say who, but 7 or 8-year-old, and you were sitting quietly and talking to them and interacting. And I suspect they're maybe one of your students from your academy. And my mind and my body and everything is just like going 1,000 miles a minute when we're in rehearsals. But it just struck me. And I looked at you spending really authentic, mindful time with someone on your break when you're kind of you're a lead in this show, which is like, outside and minus 40 degrees. And we have a week to put up a big, huge show. And yet you were taking this time, and it just struck me like you are a true mentor to the young people you work with. It was really, it just imprinted on me. And I'm not like that. Like I have lots of positives, and what we have created at Fourth Line is wonderful, and the opportunities we give young people, but I don't think I'm that.
I love watching you direct kids. I love it because you're like Paul, you treat them as adults.
Yeah.
They like that. They really like that. But sometimes I think you think they get more than they do or something, but you push them. I loved it. There was a girl that had her first kiss in that play. And you were so respectful and so sweet with her about it. It was her first kiss.
In life, like her first kiss in life.
I know. But you were so good about it, and it was so touching. And you know what? I think kids are magic. I think they are absolutely magical beings, and I just like being around them, and I really respect their authenticity and who they are. And it is a life's work to try, especially young girls, but even boys now too, not to just put the wall up and hide. I don't want the kids to hide. I want them to trust, and I want them to be who they are, because they're so wonderful. Like, we're in good shape.
It was an incredible moment, and it was also incredible. I had never seen your academy perform, and then we did this Open Spaces Theater Festival in the middle of the pandemic, and you guys did something on that Thursday opening of the festival, and it was lovely to watch the way it had a dance quality, the way you move them and how you're there but not there, and you keep it all moving. It was really
well. The beauty about improv is you're teaching people to be funny themselves. You have to get out of the way, but you're guiding people toward their funny bone, toward their silly, and once they find it, they don't need you, but you're opening the door. It's like a portal. And I am a good teacher for beginners because I like to inspire. If you want to get to the next level, go somewhere else, because someone else will teach you that next level. But I am good at getting you interested in it so that you'll want more. That's my forte as a teacher. I don't know how teachers do it day in and day out. God knows I don't know how they do it with the mask. I don't know how they're doing it. I am beyond in admiration for all of them.
I don't even know if you know this, but I was there because I was texting you in the show, but the very last major theatrical piece I saw was a spur of the moment decision to buy a matinee ticket. I guess it was last February to Carolina Change. And I hadn't seen it the first time. And I got front row on the side, and right where all of her scenes were.
Yeah.
And it was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was kind of tired, and I had so much going on last year around that time. And I freaking love that show. And I know you have a small
role, but my God, to be in the company of those people.
Oh,
Julie Black learned Robert McQueen, and she created the most incredible performance. And that woman had never done anything like that before. And she took the stage.
What?
Never done musical theater before. She's a singer. She's in a band.
I know, but
she was magnificent. And Vanessa Sears, and oh my God, that cast was redonkulous.
It really was. Damien and
just the best of the best. It was like candy. It was just
when I think back, you're a part of now for me a memory almost a year old of seeing a piece of theater. Who would have thunk that would be the last thing I would see for who knows when, right? I mean, the Halloween show that Lindy and I wrote and I directed, but that was something I'm much more involved in. But just to sit as audience and
I'm starving for it. I'm starving. I go to readings and I'm like, oh, I love this. I love this. It's not the same. It's not actually doing, but this is, I want this. I want this as an audience as much as I want it as an actor. It's ridiculous how bereft I feel without it. It's ridiculous.
Well, and we're gonna go to questions in a second, but this summer you also did me this intense solid of coming and reading the first thing I ever wrote.
Oh my God, though.
Out loud. You and Peyton LaBar.
Yeah.
I wrote this thing in a few nights in the middle of COVID.
You wrote that in a few nights.
And you guys gave it life and gave such incredible feedback and support and such kindness to it. It was the first theatrical thing I guess I had done since probably seeing you and Carolina Change. I'm just putting it all together.
That play's got lots of life, but I'm so excited to see where you go with your writing. That's amazing. That was so meant to happen. You were eventually going to come to this place. And I think of myself as a writer in that way too, that eventually, because I know how to direct and I know how to perform and I know how to teach, but I don't know how to write. And I'm so fascinated by it. I'm a decent writer because I'm an improviser, but I'm really into it. And you wrote a great piece.
Well, I didn't mention
my heart. It was hard. It was hard for me because it was mothers and daughters, and anything mothers and daughters kills me.
I mean, me too.
Kills me.
So I don't know if I missed anything. I'm just looking at all my notes. Like I did take a photo. I will send you of all of my, and I didn't have any sticky notes. So I have these little pink bunny pieces of paper from Maud
You're
Rose.
so good, but you keep your eyes on the screen. That's so good.
No, it's good. I am just so thrilled to have spent this time with you. I am a huge fan. And, I think we're kind of a
great friend. You're part of my Peterborough life. I'm very honored to have this connection with you guys. I really am. And also, Fourth Line was a big deal for Paul too. So it's he was very much a part of our family. And Tilly and Meg and like everybody was a part of it, right?
Yeah, Paul was so great. I guess his first show was The Last Green Hill, right? That crazy, crazy piece.
Really crazy.
And then he did Welcome Death after that.
Yes.
Yeah. Not as much his favorite thing, memorizing lines. That's all I will say.
No, he was an improviser at heart for sure. And he was a creative swearer when he forgot his lines.
I don't know what he did. He got so mad in one rehearsal that I don't think he kicked a chair and
threw it.
And threw it or something. And then he left rehearsal. Like, it's like, what is going on? The next day he came back with like a pink outdoor plastic chair that he had written Paul's memorial chair on. And he had drawn a picture of his face on the back of it. And that was a pretty good mea culpa. Because, he felt things really deep. Would you agree with that about?
Very deeply, very deeply.
And war is
very sensitive, very, I don't know anyone who ever made me laugh harder. He was so funny, but he was so complicated as a human. And he had depression and he had lots of inner conflict, and he had lots and lots of stuff that he kept to himself. He was a complex guy who coped with a wicked sense of humor that everybody loved. And he would say the thing in the room that no one should possibly get away with, and he did.
He had a really smart.
So edgy, ridiculous. If I said it, it would be like, right? Yeah. It didn't offend anyone because it just had this crazy charisma. It's very, very special.
You have a bit of that too. You have a childlike quality too, though. In a positive way. You have a childlike quality. I don't know, like it's that. How come you can get right in there and play so beautifully? You still remember how to play. The other thing is, I was looking at a photo of your mom tonight, and I don't know. Do you know how much you look like her?
I do now. Because it's weird. It's inevitable, isn't it? Yeah.
Wild. It was wild. Well, okay, so I can't say goodbye yet because Lindy's going to take over and tell us if there are questions for Linda Kash. So Lindy, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, we lost you again. You went back on mute.
Hello.
Hello.
Again.
Sorry. I said yes, we do have some questions and a couple comments. So I'll start with a comment from Terry. She says, Linda, anytime you want to come back and see the farm and renos we've done, let me know.
He sent me the picture of some trees that we had planted, and they're really tall now, and it was amazing. And I never thanked you for that, Terry. But yeah, you don't know how many times I've driven by. I have driven by the farm many times. So has Tilly. It's something that we do, and one day we will pull into, and Meg does it too. And one day we'll pull in the drive, but we haven't yet. But
And I made stunning apple butter from the apples in Mary's orchard, which we're still using on grilled cheese sandwiches.
Oh, it's so good. Paul made cider.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, his cider press looked like a guillotine. It was really weird looking, but it was really good cider. Thanks, Terry. I'll do it one of these days.
Amazing. I have a question from Dane, actually a question for Kim and a question for Linda. So for Kim, if you could direct Linda in anything, what would it be? And for Linda, vice versa. If Kim could direct you in anything, what would it be?
I have two choices. One is Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh my God, let's do it.
And now we were talking about it before we started tonight, is Teresa Tova's Still the Night?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should. And what I would like is something we sort of talked about, and it was A Christmas Carol where I play most of the characters.
Yes, the one person Christmas Carol. We got
one person Christmas Carol. My God, I want to do that so badly.
Let's do it. Why yeah. Why not do that? Okay, we gotta.
What's the big thing?
We gotta get out of this pandemic, and then we gotta do it.
Okay.
A question from Jordan says, hey, Kim and Linda, I've worked exclusively in commercials so far, which has been awesome, but I'd like to expand to film and television while keeping the commercial work. Any tips on striking this balance?
Over to Linda.
It's such a different animal. I think the more you know of the script, like, I think you have to maintain a real playfulness in commercials, and improv definitely helps. But we have to, in the audition room, we just have to watch you enjoy yourself, because that sells the product. We have to watch you love what you do. When you're looking at a script, you are honoring the writer, and you're honoring the piece itself. So the more you know about the character and about your place in the film, because often we don't quite know what our function is. Michael always used to say, you read about the big world of the play or the film, and then you understand the acts in it and your place in that, and then you understand the scenes that you are in within those acts, and then you get to commit to dialogue. But you need to understand the big picture, and then you earn the right to your dialogue, and the more you know, the better. And if often they don't give you the script and they just give you your lines and your scenes, make decisions so that it's clean, and then at least if it's dead wrong, it's cleanly wrong, and the director can send you in another direction. But do the work. Ironically, do the work.
That's great, thank you. And now I have a question and a comment from Kate. I'll start with the comment. She says, you make the world a better place and continue to be one of the most giving and generous actors, mentors I've ever met. You inspire all of us. That goes for both of you. And
I know which Kate this is, I think.
Kate's question is, Linda, if you could write a love letter to your younger self, the Linda Kash, AKA Sharon Bolax, who is starting out in showbiz, what piece of advice or guidance would you give yourself now?
I would say try not to compare. Try not to constantly look at others for your inspiration. You're competing with yourself, ultimately. And I would tell her that she's good enough. I would tell her that her clumsiness and her awkwardness is actually not a bad thing. It's something that will serve her, because it will keep her sort of human. And at the time, I sort of questioned my intelligence, and I questioned all sorts of things that I would say, don't question it. You are smarter than you know, and just keep going, and don't compare. Stop comparing with other people. Yeah, and you don't have to be your mom. You don't have to be your dad. You don't have to. You can You can do what instinctively you need to do. That's what I'd say to her. She's all right. You're all right, kid.
That's great. And just another comment.
And I love you, Kate, sir.
Oh, you said her last name. I love her too. I think she's an amazing person.
Amazing. Should
100%.
be a star.
She will be a star.
It's Spotify. Kate, sir.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Just one more comment from Helen in Port Hope. She says, thank you both so much for a wonderful evening. I laughed out loud many times. So nice to see you again, Linda.
Thanks,
So
Helen.
we had lots of thank yous and lots of feedback that people have really enjoyed spending their evening this way with you both.
Oh my God. I had no idea how we would fill our time. You're absolutely right. It's so funny.
I have a moment always at 7:15 where I'm like, oh my God, we're getting really fast through it. I want it to last 90 minutes. And then I look up and it's 8:17. I'm like, oh Lord, you, my goodness, are a pleasure, woman.
You too. Hey, this is like a whole new calling. This is good.
Aw,
You hold the conversation. It's really good.
Thank you so much. Well,
Thank you.
You make it easy. You make me look good. And I'm so glad you agreed to do the first one of our 2021 season in this never-ending pandemic.
Next one is Naomi, right?
Next one.
I'm looking at Naomi.
Looking at Naomi Duvall saying a great listen. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi. No, next one's Teresa, right?
I know it's Teresa Tova next week, and
Don't miss it.
she's amazing. I mean,
Dynamite.
you're amazing. She's amazing. And then I have Andrea Scott, who's an incredible playwright and actor. And then Beau Dixon, who, of course, you directed his Dora Award-winning play, Beneath Spring Hill, amongst other things that you have directed, of course.
Great performance. Great writer.
Great production, too. I saw it in a like what are those things called? A cafetorium, like a cafeteria auditorium at the Bowmanville High School whenever it was on tour.
Oh yeah, I mean he transformed any gymnasium into yeah.
You did beautiful work. He did beautiful work. So
amazing. Thank you. Thanks, gorgeous. Thanks, Lindy. Also gorgeous. Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks all of you.
Thanks
all of you for
coming, guys.
All right, enjoy yourself. Eat the cream cheese, maybe drink some wine, whatever you do now. And yeah, lots of love. And thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you for having me. I'm really over the moon. This was
and I'll send you the photo. I'll send you the photo of my setup here. I couldn't send it to you beforehand because then you'd see my questions and my research.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad. Like it was great.
Okay, lots of love.
That was fabulous.
Bye everyone. Have a good night. We'll see you next week if you can make it.